Yeah, it's such an honor. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You're such important. You have such an important place in the part of punk rock history, in the music's history. But it's great to have you on our Quebec radio show, Prescription Punk Rock. I would be surprised that somebody will not recognize you. But for those who don't recognize your hair, your eyes, or your beautiful face, who the hell are you?
I am Exene Cervenka, most known for the band X.
Oh, yeah. Exene, welcome to Prescription Punk Rock. I mean it. It's such an honor. You just released one of the greatest records of the band, which is such amazing after all those years. But I'm not surprised. You're an incredible talent and musician, an incredible human being. So I'm not surprised that you will leave X with one of the greatest records. But before getting into the new album and X, I'm curious. Let's get back to when you were a kid. How did you start discovering music and that quest or journey into the world of music?
The car radio, the AM car radio. I lived in a really, really small town in Illinois. We had an AM radio in the car. Because all I did was go to in the early 60s, if you lived in rural America, there wasn't anything to do except play outside and watch cartoons in the morning, or maybe Man from Uncle at night when you got older. And I went to Catholic schools. I went 5 days a week to school, confession on Saturdays, church on Sunday, and all kinds of other things to go with that. And there was a giant playground there. What I loved was watching baseball and hockey with my dad, because that was the only time I could ever kind of be around my dad where he would tolerate me, right? And playing outside. So I had this great imagination. But anytime I could get in the car and we didn't have like a big grocery store or anything. So it was just a very small and I love looking back at my life. I had the greatest childhood, I think. Wasn't perfect. I loved it. But you get in the car and the radio would be on, and it would be this amazing thing because you could hear, they mixed everything up. We got the radio from Chicago. So, you got to hear like Ray Charles, and then you got to hear Johnny Cash, and then you got to hear, the Ronettes, and there was just weird mixes of things. And I learned really early on that all songs were love songs, and they were mostly really sad songs about not having love. And so I think that influenced my writing forever. And then when the FM radio started, when I was about 10, then that was insane. Then I had my transistor radio, and I could listen to WCFL out of Chicago, and you could listen to all the psychedelic stuff and Jimi Hendrix. And so it was just great. It was the radio. The radio was so important. It was such a lifeline to the outside world. And then the shows like Hullabaloo and Shindig and Ed Sullivan, watching the bands on there. Because, the mainstream stuff, they had to put on the British invasion and whatnot. So it was great. I just soaked it all up because that's all I had.
It's great. It's great. For a DJ like me, it's cool to hear. Yeah, I think that's what I love about radio. It surprised you. Back in the days, it did. DJ didn't know
Oh,
what you're
yeah.
gonna play, so you're in the car and you got that song, and maybe the next song is not a song you love, but then and you learn from that process, and you open your mind slowly to every kind of music, because like you said, it's not just one type of music playing on radio.
Well, what I guess, my mother was kind of agoraphobic, so she was not in the car a lot. But so I was in the back seat one day. My dad was driving, my mom was in the front, and we're driving in the middle of nowhere, going somewhere, and Light My Fire came on the radio. And I guess it was my mom knew I liked that song somehow. I don't even know. Like, my family, we didn't communicate, so I don't know how we knew anything about each other. And it came on, and she turned it up, and I recognized she was turning it up for me. So I'm sitting in the back seat, in the middle of the back seat, no seatbelts in those days. And it was the long version, which I had never heard. So I was expecting Light My Fire. And then all of a sudden, Ray came in with that keyboard stuff, and then Robbie. And that changed my life forever at that moment. And then that year, I got that record for Christmas. My mom gave me that record and the Bobby Gentry, Glenn Campbell record, which is one of the greatest country records ever. And I was off and running. And I think that day changed me forever, and changed the fact that I met Ray later. I never would have thought I would meet Ray Manzarek as a 12-year-old in the middle of nowhere in Illinois, right? So those things, yes, radio and college radio and the underground newspapers and the late 70s, early 80s media that we were in control of ourselves, and people like what you're doing. Uh, that's that's why we're all here now, right?
That's crazy. That's crazy. And I'm sure when you heard the songs, there was something, but maybe inside, because it's the destiny after all, maybe something in you knew that you're gonna cross path. But yeah, it must be surreal the first time you met Ray, like thinking about that moment in the car with your dad where you found, and that's such special time, and now have the chance later to work with him.
Well, of course, when we met him, none of that was in my mind. Of course, we were playing at the Whiskey, and he and his wife came to see a band. This is the story. I don't remember the story, but John tells it, so I'm assuming it's true. I was probably so drunk I don't remember, but I was having a good time, whatever. Some band was playing, we were opening. His wife Dorothy recognized that we were playing what do you call it, Soul Kitchen. And she goes, "Oh, Ray, they're playing your song." He goes, "What are you talking about?" "Oh, that's Soul Kitchen." So he came backstage to meet us, which is crazy in and of itself that we would meet at the Whiskey in the backstage, because that's so Doors like.
Mm.
And the other thing about it that's so great was the Whiskey was unchanged since the 60s, because it was just 5 years ago. I mean, we're talking, okay, so we're talking 79, and imagine that 10 years right before that, they were playing the Whiskey, right? Wasn't that long. And he asked us what we were doing, and we told him we were going to sign a record deal with Slash. He asked us who was producing, and then he said he would like to. And then we made the decision to have him produce our first record.
And how was the difference of meeting him and chatting about the Doors and everything and X, and then work with him? And you have to shift, to be, because I'm sure it was kind of not your idol. I hate that words, but you were impressed with him, and then you have to switch and just, create something magic and make the chemistry work.
It was so interesting coming from the middle of nowhere. I moved to Florida, and then I had this whole different life there with my sister and a bunch of people exploring like all the billions of antiques that were just dropped off everywhere. And you could wear a 20s beaded dress and go dancing at a gay disco, and then wake up in the morning and it was in shreds, and you'd just go, okay, I'm gonna wear this today then. It was just this fabulous life I was having. When I came to California, it was hard with no money, and I met John right away. It was a series of meeting incredible people. Like I met Tomato de Plenty and the Screamers, and then I met all these people in these bands, and then there were all these other weirdos and great, cool people hanging out, coming through in and out of that scene. Young, old, people from Europe, people from Mexico, people that were 12, people that were 70, and he was just one more really cool person that was entering into that maelstrom of stuff, hanging out on the Sunset Strip every night and seeing all the Hells Angels and then the hair bands, and just thinking that next door to where I was walking in the Rainbow, they were probably like Led Zeppelin was in there with their groupies. And it was still like, 76. It was still the 60s in a way, So meeting Ray was great, but it kind of wasn't like an anomaly. People were cool at all, and we were in Los Angeles of all places, so you're gonna see these people around. And I was a pretty wild kid, and I didn't take much seriously, and I never thought things were ever going to happen. Like it was just today. It was just right now. Let's do this thing. So we didn't really put a lot of thought into having Ray produce us. It wasn't until after the record was done and I put the needle down to play it for Kick Boy Face, Claude Bessie from Slash Magazine, famous, that I realized, oh shit, Ray played on our record. Everyone's going to hate us. I didn't think of it until the moment I started to put that needle down on the test pressing and play it for someone else, how fucked we were. And then we didn't realize until we played our first show after the record came out that everyone on the audience was expecting Ray to be in our band and going, "Where's Ray? How come Ray's not here?" And that there were people coming to see us only because they wanted to see Ray Manzarek. And we just didn't think like that. We just did whatever we wanted when we wanted without any thought to the future. And then we had to deal with the consequences. So I think it's neat that we pre-computer cell phone age, you just did stuff.
Yeah,
You just did stuff, and whatever the repercussions were. So what? You made a mistake, people told you, you said what you thought, they said what they thought, and you moved on. Nobody hated each other. But Of course, no regrets for having Ray Planet. No regrets for him producing our first 4 records. Glad we did it that way. It was supposed to be. We did it. Fantastic. Great. The universe is smart, smarter than me.
So true. And it worked because it's history now. And yeah, I love the part being pissed, like pacing like the punk scene, just having Ray from the Doors because it's not the typical code. But you were in a time where people were doing things and everything was different. And like you
Yeah.
said, you really embrace art. Like you were surrounded with so characters and people, I'm sure some fucked up, some brilliant, and just embrace that at a young age, which it's so sad that kids don't have that now.
I don't know what kids have now. I know some younger people in bands, and I go see bands, and I hang out with people. Um, it's just weird because like there's advantages to technology and disadvantages. I liked when we came up where there was no people weren't recording you, everybody could just do what they wanted. I tell people this is like, okay, so I'm playing a show or I'm watching a show or both is going on at the same time. And I push somebody and I say something and it's weird and I misunderstand what they're saying because I've had too much to drink and they misunderstand and we get in this little argument. Well, we solve it. And then we go back to whatever it was we were doing. I might have said some stuff about art. I was very naive. I wasn't a high school dropout. So I'd be around all these great visual artists and performance artists. And I'd say something and they'd go, you don't even know what you're talking about. Have you ever seen this painter? Have you ever gone to this museum? And I'm like, no. And they go, well, then why don't you shut up? You don't even know what great art is. And this is what great art is. I'll take you to a museum and I'll show you some stuff. I'm like, go to hell, whatever. But the thing about it was they could feel free to say that, and there it was going to be on the internet with me making an idiot out of myself and never wanting to show my face again because I don't know anything. And it was real-time correction, real-time education, real-time information, real-time creativity, real-time, fighting, real-time making up, and it wasn't recorded. It was just I learned so much as a young person mouthing off to people. I could never do that now. So I wasn't inhibited. Nobody was. We just did whatever we felt like doing at the moment. If it was stupid, someone told us. And I don't know what it's like now because now people have so much access to each other's stuff. It's like when I watch a YouTube video of a record made in the 1920s, it's on a 78, and someone just puts it down on the turntable, puts the needle down, and lets it play for 3 minutes. And you look and there's 80,000 views, and it's this obscure, weird blues lady that I've never heard of getting 80,000 views in 2024 or listens. She didn't get 80,000 views in 1924. So there's those advantages. And I think also kids that make a really cool video and they're really fun and they have a lot going for them can have 1 million people see them suddenly, where we were lucky if we could get 100 people, in those early days. So, it's all analysis. In the end, creative people are going to make it on some level and get, we're all going to find each other. We all find each other. I don't know how we found each other back then without all that technology, but we did.
It's true. It's true. It's so different now, and the struggle also is different for band. There's so many bands, and to be out there, with millions and millions of people, and a lot of them sound the same. It was not like back in the days. Everyone has their own signature. Now you love something and you want to recreate it, not try to embrace everything, like I said, and feel yourself from art from everywhere and just create something on your own. But there's a lot of kids are doing it, and there's a new wave coming, and I think that's when we're gonna reach something. And yeah, but yeah, those days was crazy. And when you start the band, how was the scene, and how was like I said, it was a different sound. How the scene saw X back in the days.
Um, it was just that weird thing of all these people ended up in the same place doing the same thing, completely different from each other at all different ages and backgrounds. And it just, I don't know how that happened. It just all collided together in the universal way. But when you're talking about bands now, we had maybe 25 years of rock and roll. If you go back to the very beginning, Delta, like Rocket 88, and you go back to Sister Rosetta Tharpe playing guitar in the early 50s. She started rock and roll guitar before Chuck Berry, right? with her gospel Gibson guitar stuff. But so we had 25 years at the most of rock and roll and blues and American music and English music too. Now they're 70 years. So the idea of something coming up with something original or amalgamation, like Billy Zoom is the one that got the rockabilly punk rock thing going. If you do that now, people are going to say, "Oh, you're just like Billy Zoom." But back then, it was just like, "What is that weird guitar style?" "Oh, it's called rockabilly." "What's rockabilly?" So we had that great freedom to create and just draw from everything that had gone on before us and around us and mix it all up and be influenced a little by each other. But I think the best thing about the punk rock scene was we appreciated each other, but we weren't imitating each other. You had Joanna Went, who was a great performance artist, eating worms on stage right before the Circle Jerks played acoustically. It's like, what? You know, it was just a very strange, incredible time. And I'm glad people appreciate it, because you have no idea how incredible it was if you weren't there, because I'm glad it's chronicled to some extent, but it was just, there was a magic to it that is beyond explanation, and I'll never forget it. It was incredible. And I knew it at the time. I was totally aware of how incredible it was every minute, wow, this is amazing that I'm alive right now doing this.
It's cool. It's so cool to hear because you live every moment of it. You were not in the past or in the future, and I think that's another thing that we're living right now. A lot of people are in the past or the future. They're not living right now.
Well, any program that you do, whether it's like a 12-step program or a spiritual program or some kind of Zen monastery retreat, that's exactly what they're going to tell you. The past is where you go to get depressed, and the future is where you go to get anxious. And if you're in the now, you're not anxious, you're not depressed, and you don't have any expectations or any regrets or resentments. You're just right now in this second living. That is like a hard thing to maintain. And it doesn't have to be extraordinary circumstances for you to be that way. Like, I see your hat there. Like, if you're a baseball player, you can't be thinking about anything except that pitch you're going to throw, right? I think you have what do you have on your hat?
It's a little devil.
Oh, it's a devil. I thought it was a baseball guy, or I mean, a hockey guy. Same thing, little devil. But what I'm thinking about though is that thing of like you have to be in the moment, and that's why the internet is so hard. The past is just constantly hanging around your neck like an albatross, and you're hoping that the future isn't going to catch you or kill you. And I don't like that. Hey, Barky.
Hello, Barky.
I have a little dog that I rescued, and she's 15, and she has no eyes. I had to have her eyes taken
15.
out. Yeah, she has no eyes, and she is deaf. And she's had outside time, and she's had food, and she's had her medicine, and she's just patrolling around, bumping into things, barking at me. I don't know why. Fluffy, Fluffy. But
Good dog.
she's a very good little girl. I'll go get her. Come here, little girl. You
Yes,
want to
we're
go on
gonna
the
see.
radio? You want to go on TV? You want to be on the Ed Sullivan Show? Oh, she'd be on the Ed
Oh,
Sullivan
this
Show
is
with her
amazing.
mommy. Oh, she's pretty. Yeah, she had to have her eyes taken out because she had really bad glaucoma and she was in a whole lot of pain. And I couldn't figure out why she wouldn't stop biting me and stuff. We took her to the vet, and then we found out she had so much pain in her face. She's a
Oh,
good
poor.
girl. She's a pretty
She's
girl.
amazing. They
Yes.
need love, and you gave her a lot. That's
Yep.
amazing.
I have a friend who helps me. We did it together because I couldn't do it by myself because I'm gone too much. But she got two moms, two mummies. Yes. Okay. So what do you want to talk about? I'll put her down. She doesn't like to be held either.
Yeah,
Go play. Go
I'm
walk around.
curious with the experience you got through times and recording. How was the process of recording the new records? And I know the last records, which is amazing, was released during the pandemic. So how was the difference between those two records? And yeah, how hard is it now to write new songs compared to when you started up?
I feel like it's easier because I'm better at it. Um, I think too, the Alphabet Land record was being made right before COVID. I was pretty hip to what COVID was going to be before other people because I'd been following the news out of China so much. And everybody was like, "Oh, we're going to go on tour." I'm like, "We're not going on tour. We're all going to die. We're going to make a record, then we're all going to die." And they were like, "Oh, Exene." But here's the thing: because of COVID, the record had to come out in a nowhere, no touring, no, we got a lot of press. If COVID hadn't happened, I wonder if that would have been our last record, because we would have said, okay, we made a record, we're done. We did, but because that was so like, darn it, we had to come out, we had to do it one more time so we could actually make a record and tour. So I guess we made the most out of that situation. Like, we all who survived have to make the most out of that situation. It did destroy our lives, pretty much everyone, but we're here now. So the process was very similar, though, because we wrote all these songs. We worked really hard. We worked with Rob Schnuff. We went in the studio. We made the record. We recorded at Sunset Sound, and then we did everything at his place afterwards. So we did it exactly the same this time. We wrote a bunch of songs, rehearsed a lot. Sunset Sound, Rob Schnuff's place, same amount of time, same everything. So I think these two records are kind of, to me, like Los Angeles and Wild Gift are these Alphabet Land and Smoke and Fiction. And the last record, Alphabet Land, we had Robbie play on it, which is crazy, on the spoken word thing with Billy playing piano. And that just happened because he happened to come by. You know how that happened? Want to hear another Weird Doors thing? We're in the studio and John gets a phone call, and it's Robbie Krieger. And he says, hey, John. And he goes, hey. And they start talking. And then Robbie realizes he's called the wrong John. He was trying to call this other guy named John. So they start talking. He goes, well, anyway, I got you on the phone. What are you doing? He goes, well, we're in the studio. And he says, oh, okay, cool. And John says something like, oh, you want to drop by or something? He goes, yeah, I'll come by. And ended up playing on that spoken word piece. It was just so weird, right? So I don't think anything totally weird happened on this one, but I think both records are really good. And I think this probably is our very best record. So I'm really happy with the songs. I think we worked really hard on it. Some of the lyrics were written a really long time ago and put together with new lyrics and worked out between me and John. I had all these, I have so much writing and I have so many lines that are just floating around, and then I can put it in a song and work on it. Because sometimes you write something and you're really inspired, but then you don't finish it because, you just had this great idea, so you wrote it down. But when you have to come up with a song, you start digging around trying to find those things and then putting them together with other things. And yeah.
And you're right. It really that records bring me to the start of the band X. And
Hmm.
it's refreshing because it's new, but it feels like it's, that old school song at the beginning was back in the band, and that you did try a lot of things, but you went straight forward. And I think it was a spontaneous records that really hit every fans and everybody, even like people that never heard about X are listening to the records and start to listen the rest of the band discography, and you're like, wow, that's and it's another door that you open after all those years, which is kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy. Longevity in the arts is a really important thing. You just think about, Allen Ginsberg or something, I mean, he just did poetry until the day he died, and it was just, that was his thing. And, yeah, you can be famous for a minute, or you can just work really hard your whole life and have a kind of artistic career. You don't get to decide.
Yeah.
We're lucky we're alive. That's all there is luck, and, but yeah, it's nice because this record is definitely more listenable than our early stuff. A lot of people couldn't handle X, it's just too weird. Harmonies are weird, the music is weird, it's too abrasive, it's too aggressive, it's too weird. I don't understand it. But maybe when you hear this one, then you can go back and understand it.
But that's what I love, it's weird because there's the term prog, but it's just trying, and you did. And I think that's the force of X, because you went into different you were always outside that comfortable zone, which is, I think, makes you such interesting artists. And now that you have all those experience, you can play with that.
Yes, we are. We were not in the comfort zone, that's for sure. We made people very uncomfortable. Um, but we knew that. There was pop music and then there was us, it was like there was like what was popular was never my thing. I just didn't like it. I like different things. So
How much getting into the music industry changed your vision of friendship?
friendship, nothing. I mean, I don't know. The independent labels were the really difficult ones because they were the more scoundrelly ones, you know, like they signed bands. Like we never got a real accounting from Slash on how many records we sold. And, you know, record labels are record labels, business is business, you know, you have to deal with it. We're in a really good place now, though, because we license our music to Fat Possum, so we own all our records. And Fat Possum, they're geniuses. They're just geniuses. They're so creative and they love music and they do. I mean, they're out of Oxford, Mississippi. They're not out of New York City or LA or any of that. And nothing's centralized anymore in the music business. Everything's everywhere. I'm glad where things are now in music. I wish they had been like that when we started. Because when you started, you had to sign a record in perpetuity with a major label, and that was all you had. And if you didn't want to do that, then go die, you know. And so everybody signed those labels, and eventually there were enough lawsuits that everybody started getting their music back after 35 years. It should be 20, but whatever. So now we own everything, and so does a lot of other people, and that's great. I'm glad I lived long enough to see that, because that enslavement by the in perpetuity by those record labels, those contracts you had to sign. Man, they would just, you know, put your song in something and you'd get a small percentage of it and they'd make all the money. And you never could get a proper accounting, and you know, it was just difficult, and it turned a lot of people off from even trying, you know.
Yeah, because like with the first wave of punk rock, a lot of band got those shitty contract, or got signed on big label and got really disappointed because it was not what they expect, or they didn't have any lawyer to read the contract, so they got screwed with the first
Well,
records
we
and
had
got
lawyers
debt.
to read. No, yes, but we had lawyers to read the contract, but it was like, do it or don't do it. It's up to you. You know, if you want to make 12% of your record sales in perpetuity for 6 records, sign it. If you don't, die in obscurity, roll the dice, you know, and so you did. And we were lucky to live long enough to get our records back.
Yeah, but I think it's always about the music, and people dig the music. So at that point, it was a smart move. How did you saw the explosion of punk rock in the '80s, as you knew that label and everything would come because like rats, when something happened, just come for the money.
Well, I don't know exactly. What are you, like, punk explosion of what?
Like
I don't.
when I mean I'm 42, so I say punk explosion, like the '80s when the Smash was released and the Offspring got a big hook, and then
Oh, that
Green
has
Day
nothing to do with
Rancid.
us. Yeah, that has nothing to do with us. Grunge has nothing to do with us. Beatniks have nothing to do with us. We had our own little scene. We did this. We're X. We kind of were on our own after a certain, you know, we started touring and making albums, and then we were, you know, the scene wasn't there anymore like it was. But hardcore and all that other stuff, you might as well ask me about rap music or pop music or disco. It's like, no, we're just X. We do what we do. Everybody else does what they do. There were some bands that had commercial success, but I don't think that's any different than any other band having commercial success. It has nothing to do with us.
Yeah, that was the wheel going on. Because my point was, you saw it happen in the '80s, and then again in the '90s. In the '90s, it happened again, and it's the fucking wheel going on and going on. But I think that right now there's few money in the scene, so I think that music is getting back to its roots. It's all about
Yes,
creating and the process of going and meet people and connect with people, not just trying to be famous or your ego. I think it's all
yes.
about the
Well,
music.
that's why punk rock was so successful, because it was all created in a vacuum. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted, you know, like, yeah, there was media and radio that loved it, but the general public, we could do anything we wanted under the radar. And I think now when you have the opposite of that, which is everything is not a vacuum, everything is this complete, like, you know, microscopic attention to everything. You kind of become anonymous in that world, because there's just so much information, that no one's paying attention to anything except themselves, because you're in this malignant narcissistic age. So a band can kind of just do whatever they want, and if they don't mind, you know, they can do it without anyone really even paying attention to them, and develop whatever they want, because the noise cancels everything else out. You know, there's just so much. Um, but I also think if there's no money to be made on something, then there's nothing to exploit. Then you can just, the people just leave you alone. They're not, you know, the business people don't care. Like, people ask me, oh, what was it like as a woman in the scene, and the men were all exploiting you and blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, so you're looking at things by a 2024 media lens of fakery. looking back on 1980, you'd have no idea. No, that never happened to me. Oh, I can't believe that never happened to you. It's like, look, people are really good that are evil people are really good at exploiting young and helpless and defenseless and people that they know they can make money off of. They can look at you and in 3 seconds know if they can exploit you or not. And if they can't, they move to the next girl or the next woman or the next kid, whatever. I just didn't have those qualities that they wanted to exploit. That's great. I'm so glad because I don't want to be exploited. And I think that young people now in bands have that too. If they're not like going to be like billionaires if the billionaires are going to make money off them, then they're not going to bother with you. So you can do anything you want with your music. You can be out there as much as you want, be as free to create as you want, because nobody cares. And that's a good place to be, because the only people that are going to care are the people that find you. If you do a really great job at being you and you're really individual, everyone will find you and appreciate you.
Yeah, be yourself. Don't try to play a game.
Oh, yeah,
Exene,
originality. Yeah, you want to
you
be like me, then be you.
you're right.
You
You're
know,
gonna embark in the last X tour. Of course, I'm sure you see me coming. Is there any chance to see you around Quebec for a last time?
well, right now we're doing the United States. We have 4 legs of this tour booked. We're working from June to the end of December. It's a lot of shows. I'm hoping that next year we don't want to do van tours anymore. It's too hard. I can't pack and unpack my suitcase twice a day, climbing in and out of the van, up and down the stairs, in and out of the clubs. It's a long, hard day. I love the shows, but it's very hard on us. I would say that maybe if there's a festival or something, we could come up there. Like it's kind of like one-offs, like excuse me, like that's easier to do, right?
It's
So
true.
hopefully we'll do that. If people want to see us, we can afford to do it. It's like we can't just go somewhere for $5,000 and have the crew and the hotels and the travel. It just, it's not worth it.
Canada, I'm sure we can make X do a little festival run. I'm sure it can
That'd
work.
be
So
great.
it would be great. You play at Festival de Jazz in Montreal. Was it last year or 2 years
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah, we get up there when we can. Um, One time we did a tour with the Subhumans and DOA, and we went from Vancouver all the way across. I think we played in Calgary and all these places, and it was so good. It was like early 80s, and it was so beautiful just to see the wide open Canada, because it's kind of like the Midwest to me. And just to go to these towns and go, no one's going to come see us in Calgary. No one cares about us. And people would show up, and we did that whole, cross country thing. That was great. But that was a long time ago. So once in a while, we'll get up there.
Yeah, Joey Shitted is amazing. He's a good friend, and I mean, we have
Oh,
such great band.
nice.
I'm
I
reading the
loved
note.
playing with those guys. I loved those bands. They were great. They were characters. Their audiences were great. It was so much fun.
We're putting a festival lineup right now. DOA. We, maybe if the last X show, maybe No Means No with reunited for last time. I don't think so.
You know what? Let's get all the people that are still around, still doing things, that want to do things, and show people what's going on, what was happening then, what's happening now, because it's not like some kind of weird like county fair. Oh, these guys are playing their hits. I've seen bands get back together that haven't played in a long time, and they really do bring an amazing thing. It's still there. The energy's still there.
People go grab the new record, Smoke and Fiction. It's everywhere. If you don't have money, it's on every music platform. But of course, grab the vinyl and some merch. And people in festival write to X. We're gonna put some link. Exene, it was such an honor. Thank you for being rad yourself and never change and never be afraid of speaking your mind, even if some find it weird. I love everything, and I think the same as you. Thanks for fighting.
Thank you for what you do too, because it's a team effort here. We would not be allowed to. No one would know about us if it wasn't for people like you. And I'm glad you appreciate it. I appreciate you and your listeners and viewers. Thank you so much for paying attention and giving me some time.
Exene, have fun with the tour, with the Four Lakes tour. Kiss your dog for me. And of course, we're going to do a huge special on X. And let's keep each other in touch. And of course, if you come around and if it works, Let's shake hands and thank you for being rad again.
Well, let's assume it's going to work, and I'll see you. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks you, Exene. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Prescription is what you need. No more inhibition, set yourself free. Just let go, that's my